Welcome to House of Agents. And now, here's your hosts, Tessa and Ramon.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the House of Agents podcast. We are your hosts, Ramon, and Tessabella.
Oh,
and today we are talking about the 21 unbreakable rules of money. Now, I personally love this list. We actually both, I think, share a love for this list. And we're going to run through somewhat rapid fire, but we do want to definitely talk on all of these. We're going to relate them especially back to real estate. But I always think it's really important to have like a set of standards, rules, sort of expectations, and just guidelines that you follow. And I think that that definitely lends well, especially to finances, because a lot of times people just go out there sort of freeballing it, hoping for the best. And, you know, without much structure, you know, it's a little hard to stay within the lines and get yourself closer to those goals. So before I jump into rule number 1, anything you want to say?
Nope. Not much. But
Awesome.
then I usually say something.
Yep.
Is there a reason you rolled the R today? Is it because we were in Mexico?
It could have been because we were in Mexico. I was just getting back with your roots, you know?
Thank you. Well, we found out that I'm not as Mexican American as my name sounds, but
Ramon.
yeah. I won't do an ancestry.com thing though.
Yeah.
So we'll
Right.
maybe one day we'll figure it out.
Okay. So with that, on that note, we'll dive right into rule number 1, which is 70-20-10. Live on 70% of your income, invest 20%, and give 10% through tithing or to charity.
I think it depends on obviously whatever like phase of your life you're in, but I mean, especially speaking to newer agents who are younger, like literally younger, physically younger, I would probably try to live off of like 30% and invest literally 70%. Sure, if you want to, you know, donate and share, all that's all good. But I think that as much as you can possibly invest up front, because it's just like the compounding interest effect, you know, appreciation over time, like especially buying real estate, I think that's huge. But again, I think having a set amount of money that you hold for investments was probably the most important part about that equation, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm definitely a big proponent of like giving and tithing, especially. I think that that's important. And it's like we talked about, I think in the last episode, even of the things you do, when you have less becomes the things that you do when you have more. Like
Sure.
The way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So that part I definitely agree with, but I would definitely lean closer to your numbers as far as trying to live on a lot less than 70%, and know that that's going to make it much easier and better for you in the future, especially if, you know, you can, I think it's easier when you're younger too, to like live a little bit more sparingly than maybe in the future. So take that for wherever you are, I guess, in your own experience. But regardless, it is great to have a set percentage of where your income goes each time you get a check.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, we did talk about all this too. We broke down exactly how to move your money around, how to have the checkings, the business account, where to save it.
Yeah, we did do an episode on that.
That was in one of our episodes. I think it was called like money management or something like that.
Yeah. So for whoever's listening, I think listen to the 70-20-10 and then adjust those numbers a little bit according to your current situation. But use that as a great standard whenever a commission check comes in. Is okay, I know before I even get that check in my hands, because we all know when we get a nice commission check in our hands, sometimes that can get a little exciting, and all of a sudden those percentages are out the door and 100% is going to the club or whatever, as Ramon shared in the last episode.
Yep.
So I think having those kind of percentages is a great way to just make sure that you're setting yourself up for success, that you don't stay on that commission hamster wheel, just constantly chasing, you know, the next step. So rule number 2 is that if you can't buy something with cash, don't buy it with credit other than a car or a home.
It's so funny because on our previous topics where we talk a lot about money management, like I've said this and I'll say it again, if you don't have it in cash and you're paying for it in your credit card, you cannot afford it. Like if you have $10,000 and then you have in cash and you have $10,000 in credit card debt, you literally cannot afford anything.
Yeah.
Like so that's a great rule of thumb. If you can't buy it in cash, don't buy it, except for real estate.
Or it's a car as well, which again,
Yeah,
to be debated.
Yeah, to be debated. But again, I mean, I agree with that. But especially in the real estate part, obviously, in vehicles can be great tax write-offs, especially when you start getting into those good years. But yeah, for sure. I agree 100% with that.
I do too. And I think that it can also be a fun way to, this is one thing I've always done is I use it as like an incentive when there's something I want. For instance, my car that I bought last year, or 2 years, I don't even remember, a year ago.
2021.
Okay, thank you. When I bought that, like I could have afforded it earlier, but I gave myself this challenge that I was going to earn additional income in the total amount of the cost of the vehicle. And then I did end up still financing a portion of that because it helps my credit. So, I use it though, like as a little bit of an incentive to make sure that you have that to cover it. All right. Rule number 3 is never have more than 6 months of living expenses in cash.
Yeah. I mean, you know, in theory, you have too much cash, right? And you just don't know what to do with it. That'd be great. I think that you can, depending on who you are, like everyone has a different risk tolerance, but I can say this, and we said this, I think it was literally on the last podcast, was that my mind changed about money in the bank. They used to make me feel secure. I used to like to open it up in the morning and look at it. Like I liked knowing it was there until I started realizing that the longer it sits in that Bank of America account, it decreases in value. Like literally it's losing value as it's sitting there. So everyone's going to have their own, you know, what makes them feel safe, and, you know, more expenses you have and more kids or whatever it is that you are like wanting to have that safety net, obviously adjust accordingly. But I think the point being is that just, you got to get out of the mindset that cash in the bank is some type of security for you.
Yeah. It's so funny. I remember having like previous vision boards and like journals and stuff where I was manifesting my future. And I was like, I love waking up and seeing like $10 million in my bank account when I check it in the Starbucks drive-thru or whatever. I'm like, that is just not super realistic and just not a smart way to do it, really. So I definitely agree with this. I think that number's a bit flexible because, like you said, choose the number that makes you feel secure. And I think it may vary also depending on how many like dependents you have and what kind of situation you and your family or whoever are in. But yeah, I think keeping your money in motion much more than just keeping it sitting there in the bank. And I'm also a big fan of high yield savings accounts, even though right now they're not quite as beneficial. It's definitely better than sitting in a traditional bank. So that's a great place to tuck away like a 6-month little nest egg, or 12 months, a little extra to have in there as well. All right. Rule number 4. This one's a good one. Don't waste money.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's funny because you mentioned this the other day to me. You're like, it's so funny how you're quick to spend on certain things, and then other things you're like literally a penny pincher. Well, you just
guys, he's ready to drop $300 on what's it called, a rucksack.
Yeah, to go
which
rucking.
Is just I don't even know what that means, but it's just like a heavy backpack.
I mean, for the broader audience, yes.
Okay. But yes, I did give him a little bit of flack because he was so ready to order that. In fact, maybe he already did, versus like other little things he doesn't want to order. Doesn't want to order DoorDash because of the $20 delivery or something.
Yeah. Well, look, this is how like you'll always pay for things that you find value in. But I think the point being there is that like, don't waste money. Is like literally a lot of times we will just waste it for the sake of wasting it. Like we know that there's a cheaper option, but we'll take the easier route or the more convenient route, and that's fine and all, but it's just like you got to look at when you put dollars out there, it's like what is the value you're getting back? And sometimes we're literally putting dollars out and getting zero value back for it.
Yeah, I think that the don't waste money is obviously a very like no duh kind of statement.
Yeah, no shit.
But it is good to keep yourself in check a little bit and just take account for like not being the person who has so many of those auto subscriptions, or you signed up for way too many free trials and now all of a sudden they're like recurring $20, $17, $47 charges, on your card. Those things definitely start to add up. It goes back to that saying that you always share, which is shavings make a pile. Yeah. Definitely does come into play here. So my biggest suggestion on that one would be to set a specific day, like each month or at least once a quarter, that you go back and review your transactions. I personally would do it much more often than that. I like to do that monthly, but having a good grasp on like where you're spending money. And also it's good to like stare that in the face and be like, okay, wow, I had a lot of careless spending last month. You know what I mean? And you can kind of reel it in or set yourself on a new little goal.
For sure.
All right. Rule number 5 is to not spend money based on emotion. Sort of similar tone, but
yeah, don't spend money based on emotion. I think that's hard when you're making, especially large purchases, business transactions, things of that nature. Buying vehicles, like you might have an emotional attachment that you want this thing, and you're like thinking about this feeling you're gonna have once you have it, but then you have to be realistic on can you actually afford it or not. And so I think what that's saying is like is again, I think one of the common themes that I hear is delayed short-term gratification.
Yep.
And emotionally, we can almost talk ourselves into anything. And so I agree with that. I mean, it's hard to actually remove it out of the equation, but one thing that's always helped me is when I'm really excited about something, I just give it a night of sleep.
Yeah.
And then if I still feel that same fire I felt the night before, I'll probably end up pulling the trigger. But 8 times out of 10, I don't the next day.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think giving yourself that time window is important. And then also this goes for all types of emotions. Cause I know some people also, you know, whether it's let's say you're sad or frustrated, heartbroken, whatever, you know, you may have a vice that's shopping or drinking or whatever. Those are things that you're spending money based off of an emotion that came up.
I'll give you an example too, and then we'll move on to the next one real quick, but it's like luxury sales or high-end goods, like high ticket items. Like this could be everything from a nice watch, a vehicle, like an expensive plane, right? Like whatever it is, like a plane to get like a ticket, right? Mm-hmm. Jet, or if it was like on Delta One or whatever, everything that you do in that category, high-end sales you're sold on emotion and you justify it with logic, right? And so, but there's truth to that. So it's like, if you wanted the new Range Rover, I just came out, it's freaking sick. You would say, I want it like physically. I'd love to be driving it. It looks so cool. I'll get more clients, whatever you tell yourself, right? But then no, legitimately, if you can take that that purchase price and that write off in that first year, like don't just think that, but actually run the numbers and see what your actual tax savings would be, and then weigh that, right?
Yeah.
Not just go purely off of, oh my God, you know, I want to keep up with the rest of the real estate ballers out there. I need to get a new whip. So when I pull up to the association, people know who show like, you know what I mean? Like let's just all get real. You think about like what you pull up and it's all good, but just take it a step further and make sure you're able to justify it with real logic.
Yeah, I love that. All right, rule number 6 is when investing your money, do your due diligence.
I can tell you from firsthand experience on this, I've made really good investments in my short career thus far. I've made some ones that are a little questionable. And it all came back down to like, there's always more than meets the eye, and not everyone is doing as good as they say they are. And I know that's like, again, like, yeah, no shit. Right. But like when you're investing, just take that extra time to dot your I's and cross your T's, ask questions. And, you know, honestly, my other experience with this outside of like the stock market has been, you know, your best investment is in the things that you're doing. I've put some money with other people and I've made money, lost money in it. But at the end of the day, I look back and I go, you know what? I should have just took that and invested what I'm doing.
100%.
So just, you know, my own experience, but
yeah. I think that saying that goes, you know, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Absolutely. It's definitely a very true one. I think always do your due diligence. And then, I mean, ultimately it does come down to kind of your risk tolerance and how much you were willing to go all into. But I would definitely second that in most cases, more often than not, had you taken those funds and invested it in either something that you had some element of controlling that controllable, or at least something that you understood more thoroughly, it probably would have yielded a higher return for you.
And just because people with money or people you admire in whatever capacity are doing it doesn't mean skip the due diligence. Like that's, if you think this quick tangent, but like Bernie Madoff, it's like the biggest Ponzi scheme in the world. Do you know how many people just took the word of somebody else and gave this guy like $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, $50 million at a time? And it was all because there was social proof, right?
Yeah.
Oh, well, Tessa invested in this. Like, I would do it too, right?
Yeah.
And so many times, whether you know it or not, you do make investments and you, whether it's time or money, into things because you see other people that are successful doing it. And so again, just don't skip, as simple as it says, do not skip your own due diligence.
And ask lots of questions. I think as questions get asked, so in the example you just gave of somebody you trust invested in that or did that before you, they may have done their own set of due diligence, but you may ask those same questions in a different way that you get a little bit more insight, or you may get just a different answer because things have changed. And so it's always good to not like shortcut that process.
Yep. Agreed.
All right. Rule number 7, think 4 generations in the future before you spend or invest your money.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot. 4 generations. I got to be honest. I think that it obviously makes sense. Like, and I think maybe not necessarily like there's a hard stop or a hard start at 4 generations, but yeah, I have to ask if, at 4 generations, will anyone even remember you existed? Probably not, just being real. But I think the point being though, is that when you're making large investments, and whatever large is to you, it's just really like extending your time horizon. And I think we talked about that before about, if you're thinking about dollars today or tomorrow, if you extend your time horizon, a lot of the investments you maybe are questioning will make more sense as you extend that horizon. So I think it's a little, personally, I think that's a little over exaggerated.
Yeah.
But, extending your time horizon when making investments, I think, is key to understanding the value of and the compound effect of appreciation, interest. And we're talking about real estate, obviously, but yeah, I agree with it. The concept, not maybe the actual.
Yeah, I would say I interpret this more as just like think about, obviously we don't want to spend with our emotions, but we do want to have some degree of emotional tie that we think about the other people who may be impacted by those purchases or investments.
Love
so
that.
Again, whether that's kids, spouses, Harley, our dog, whatever,
seriously.
Just thinking a little bit more beyond just your own, win or loss in that scenario. Rule number 8 is to never carry a credit card balance unless it's at 0%. I'm going to start this one off and just say I don't fully agree with that. Obviously, that's like a ideal scenario. I think that's a great thing to work towards and strive towards, but I don't think that that's fully realistic for a lot of people listening. And so I just want to jump to it at that one. What I do think is really important is that you're aware of the percentage that you owe on the money that you are on the balance that you are holding on a card or for a loan or things like that, especially if you have any sort of like personal loan or whatever it may be. That kind of thing is really important. And I think real estate agents of all people should understand more than anyone, like what you're paying for that debt.
Yeah.
But just being aware of that is super, super important. And obviously, if you want to continue to improve your credit worthiness and your credit score and your credit accessibility, you're going to have a much easier time doing so the lower you keep that held balance. So I always strive to keep mine, honestly, the goal is below 3%. 10% or more is kind of like a happy medium, but work towards keeping that where you're not just holding these big balances that you carry over all the time.
I think that one, it's just the principle of a certain amount, like you said, because it's a slippery slope, right? Like first you start carrying 1,000 and I've been there, like you get comfortable with 1,000, then you're like, oh, well, it's 2. Life doesn't change that much. Actually, nothing changes. 3, 4, 5, 10, 20. Next thing you know, your bill's at your $25,000 on that card. And yeah, when that interest payment hits at that 24.99%.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot of dough.
Yikes.
Yeah, yikes. So I think it's just don't get too comfortable leaving those balances because it's a slippery slope and you can easily get caught up where you're upside down. Oh, yeah. Way more debt, less cash. And, if your business is kind of slow, I mean, that's not a good position to be in at any point, but much less, you're a couple months of no income away from a problem. Yeah, 100%. So, all right. Rule number 9, never have all of your money in one account. Yeah. I mean, I think, obviously you probably want to diversify where you put your cash. I've been there where I shouldn't say I had one account, but I had like a main account that had all the dough in it. Yeah. Yeah, big mistake. Because the other thing too is you don't really get a good understanding of like that. If you had $100,000 in an account, like you don't really have a good understanding of that. It says 100, but really X amount of that is for taxes. There's payroll tax and everything you pay yourself. You got a rental property you want to buy, and it's 20,000 down. Like you want to split it out. But I think what that 21 rules was the number what? Number 10?
9. Number
9 is also saying is just diversify your money, right? Like put it in other, and remember, cash in physical cash is not gaining any value. So move it around, but just don't pile it all into one and say, yeah, look how much cash I have.
Yeah, 100%. And that kind of brings to rule number 10 is very similar, but it's never have all of your money in just one investment. And then in parentheses, we have unless it's your first deal, which still you don't want to have 100% of your money in that necessarily. But I understand the notion of like sometimes you got to really put a bit more skin in the game up front on that first one. But I definitely agree with not having it in all one investment.
Yeah, I mean, my personal opinion is like, I think with that said, I mean, you really just can't go wrong with real estate. I mean, I got to be on like, it's a hard asset. It gets more valuable over time. Any statistic that's out there in the world will show you that if your time horizon is long enough, you will make money on that investment. I've personally cleared out my checkings account to like, I think I said this on the last, like $100 on a real estate purchase. Good property came up. I bought it. Now I have money other places. Like I was like, eating ramen noodles for a month on end.
Love a good ramen noodle.
Well, for like a month though, what I mean? Like not a day is fine, but a month, no. But I wasn't doing that. However, you just can't lose investing in real estate. So I would say, obviously, don't put yourself in a like financial hardship investing in something, but don't be afraid to take a big swing in an asset class you understand.
Yes.
Yes. Do not take an all-in position on cryptocurrency unless you are a freaking expert. Yeah. And even the experts get burned sometimes, right? So again, with real estate, I think that it is okay to go all in on it. Just don't put yourself in a financial situation you're not gonna be happy with.
Yeah, that was one note, which probably I guess goes to that, and maybe the one about doing your due diligence too, is that like oftentimes an investment is going to take much longer for it to like yield a return that's really satisfactory than you probably think or maybe were sold on. So taking that into consideration too. Very, very rarely, if ever, is there something that I shouldn't say if ever, but very, very rarely is there something you're putting your money in and making like a massive return in a very short turnaround time. Okay. So that's definitely important to consider. Next is never spend more than you can truly afford. I think we already kind of talked on this, but that's definitely just, again, reviewing your finances frequently, being aware of that, not spending your money before you make it, not counting your chickens before they've hatched or whatever that phrase is super, super crucial. And it's easy, I think, especially for agents to fall into that hole.
Yeah. Don't count those pendings till the ink dries. But on that note too, this isn't like a formula or anything, but like, I got to argue that, when you're spending too much, like, I know when there's something I bought and I'm like, fuck, I should have done that. Right. Yeah. And so follow your gut instinct. And when it's probably too much or it makes you uncomfortable, unless it's a appreciating asset like real estate, like second guess yourself on that. Follow your gut,
All right, 12. I love this one, and I've definitely fallen victim to it before, is to not spend money solely to impress others. I think most people in life, or at least I would like to think so, can admit to one time or more, where they bought something that was much more based on like maybe what other people would or would not think of them if they did or didn't buy it. And it's just foolish. I think that when you fall into that kind of thing, small or big, like whether you like it or don't like it, it becomes irrelevant because you're just trying to please the masses and kind of like look cool or impress others. It does not last long. That is not truly fulfilling or satisfactory. And it is only going to end up putting you in typically not a great place.
Yeah. I mean, and people that you're actually trying to impress usually don't give a shit about what you're thinking they care about.
Yeah. Your new Gucci belt. They couldn't care less.
Do not care. Actually, Damon John has a funny, if you guys have looked it up on YouTube, he's talked about his getting around really wealthy people for the first time. He had all these diamond chains spinning, entourage, bodyguards, and he started getting around people with real money, and they look like a normal, complete, just plain Jane, and these guys are worth like 10x what he said in that moment he felt stupid. Like he felt like, okay, I'm not doing this right. But the other thing that I would say on that is, I thought about this the other day, and I don't know, it might come off the wrong way to some people, but I think it's the truth. is that when you're starting off, and I'd say up until like you're maybe 40 years old, like nobody really expects you to have a shitload of money.
Yeah, that's
like
very
nobody
true.
really, I mean, that's like, you might have this, like, especially in the entrepreneur space, like you feel like you're such a loser if you're not clearing 7 figures passively a month. Like, and don't get me wrong, there's people out there doing that for sure. Most of them are full of shit, but there are people that are really doing that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But when you get into older age, like people then expect you to have assets, to have money, to be financially set. So just know, like, by trying to fake it early on, like you're setting yourself up to not have it. And like the unfortunate part of life, well, I wouldn't say unfortunate, but just the reality is that like your time runs out. Like you don't have the runway you have. If you have a 30-year runway right now of investments, you're going to get to the end of that 30 and you don't have, there's no like that house to buy. It's not going to matter. You're going to be dead in 10 years. Yeah. It sounds kind of like cynical.
It's a little morbid, but I mean, it's the truth,
so
though. True.
Yeah. So it's like, don't get caught up trying to fake it. Right. And exhaust your runway. And then next thing you know, you're out of it.
Yeah.
Because people don't expect you to have a ton of assets and crazy passive income and be financially free and set when you're in that time frame. But later on in life, they do. So just don't get caught up in that.
That's a very good point.
If you want to become a better agent, there's only one place to do it, and that is BAMX.
Everyone tells you what to do, but BAMX shows you how to do it.
Whether it's creating the perfect green screen video, overcoming objections, or creating scroll-stopping captions, BAMX has it.
Click the link below and use the code HOA for 10% off your yearly subscription at checkout.
All right, next one is number 13. Make sure the reward always outweighs the risk.
Yeah, I think that just comes from a value perspective, right? Like, what's the risk I'm taking and the value I'm getting back for it? Now, this could be from an investment that you hope pans out. It can be from something you purchase that you're going to utilize for, you know, like if you buy a really expensive camera because you're going to start a YouTube channel, it's like, okay, well, what's that $4,000 or $5,000 investment into that piece of equipment? And then what's the reward that I would get for that investment, right? Like, what's the outcome potentially? I think if you just weigh value, like, so that's why a lot of times just buying the better shit, especially when it's assets, is usually a better route to go than going cheap. But that one's an interesting one. I think it's kind of like a little bit of a no-brainer.
Bit of a given, yeah.
But, you know, I think on that one, don't invest anything you're not willing to lose.
Yes.
Or cannot afford to lose. I think that's because regardless of what the reward is, if you literally can't lose it, if you're going to go down, if you lose it, then that's a problem.
Yeah, probably not a great thing to.
No.
All right. Rule number 14. I love this one, is treat your money as if you worked hard for it, even gifts and investments. And what it made me think of is actually this TikTok that I saw the other day. And it was this girl who was talking about, she was like, I don't know why every time I return something, I feel like that was free money now that I get to go spend. So she's like, just return something to Target. Now I just got an extra like $50 when really that was mine that I spent the first time. And I've definitely felt that before. Like, I just returned some stuff to Amazon the other day. Now my Amazon account has a little $70 credit on it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how nice of me.
Yeah. And I think I returned my first items ever in my life with you about 3 weeks ago. But I've never felt that feeling before. Every time a dollar leaves my pocket, it hurts. So I never feel like happy about it. But what I was thinking about was I've made some investments before, like, and I think what you'll realize as real estate investors, the first rule of money, Warren Buffett, right, is don't lose money. The second rule is don't ever forget the first rule, which is don't lose money. So I've done deals before where I did very well, right? I've done deals before where I barely got out without losing, and I've done deals before where the plate got cleaned, right? Like it was a slam dunk. So slam dunk, when you're first starting out, like you're equating your hours and your output to the actual the end reward, right? The return on your investment. And sometimes when you clean the plate, it's a really good deal. The hours, it doesn't equate. It's like you almost didn't work hard enough in your mind to get that money. So don't let that mindset, when that money comes back to you, don't think like you didn't do anything to earn it. You did, right? There was a lot of things that led up to that. But a lot of times when you get that big chunk back, you're like, oh shit, it doesn't really add up. Like you got extra. It's like, don't treat it like that. Treat it like you worked for every dollar that came back.
Yeah.
And don't get reckless with it.
Well, that way you'll average out hopefully on things that maybe you didn't do as well on. Huh?
Yeah. I mean, it's an extreme example, but that's why people who get handed, $1 million lose it almost every single time, right? They didn't do literally anything to earn it. That's why it goes out. But like to them, it's like, I did nothing to get this additional funds. However I want to spend it, whatever. And you can get caught up in that same game when you do really good on deals. Absolutely.
So that was treat your money like you worked hard for it, even gifts and investments, which is very, very true. Rule number 15. This one, it took me a while to understand this. And I think I've heard you explain it before, so I may have you explain this one because I think you can well. But it's to never work for the same dollar twice.
My favorite example, and this work for the same dollar twice, is I have a couple, but the one you'll understand the best if you've ever thought about flipping a home before. Great idea, great way to make money. No objections there. However, if you're a real estate agent, let's just think about this. You go out, you're doing your dials. You're obviously listening to the House of Agents podcast, so you're a rock star. You're killing it. You're doing everything we're talking about, and you have deals coming in. You start making commissions, and then you go look at an investment. And it's a single family home that you can rehab, and you could go sell it for more. You can make 20, 30 grand, 50 grand, whatever. So you take the money that you already went and worked for. You already spent time, blood, sweat, and tears to get those clients and get them to the closing table. You then took those commissions and then you went and purchased a home. You bought that home, but what you really did was also bought another job, because most times you're thinking of what's the most cost-effective way for me to do this, and it's for me to do it myself. It's for me to do the rehab. So then 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock ends, you're done with showings. You got to get over to this other house, and unless you physically use your time, energy, and resources to that other project, you will not make $1 again. So what you're doing is you're taking $1, you're putting it in another bucket, and you're having to go work for that same dollar again, right? Opposed to if you were to make your commissions, take that money, buy the passive income, and keep it passive, spend as least amount of time with it possible, or hire a contractor, again, if the numbers pencil, that does the work for you, so you physically don't have to go put another dollar at risk and then have to, because if you don't do it, you will lose it. You have to go work again for that other dollar. So you're just almost creating another job for yourself. And like, I've done this with property management. I've done this with other things where you take the money you made and you're like, oh, now I'm a freaking business mogul because I know how to sell real estate. I got $100 grand. I'm going to start a property management company. I'm going to start flipping homes.
You think that's the best way to duplicate?
Yeah, let's do wholesale. Like, I got this market on lock, like, and the next thing you know, like, you're just literally taking your dollars and throwing them back out there and having to go rework for them for them to come back. Yeah. So just a way, the most common examples that I've seen is that right there.
That was a great example and very applicable. I think most people can understand or relate to that one. All right. Rule number 16 is to manage and adapt your budget monthly. Now, I definitely agree with like managing and adapting your finances monthly. I don't personally love the word budget, but everyone makes that work for themselves. Some people live off a very strict, like, I can't spend an extra 15 cents in my food category this month because I'm already headed towards the max of that. Some people don't do anything in terms of a budget. And so I think it's good to have some degree of like a happy medium, but regardless, it's manage and adapt your finances on a monthly basis. And again, this is like just having awareness. I always love the phrase that what gets inspected gets respected. And so it's like the more that we actually spend time with a magnifying glass, looking at the little stuff, paying attention to, do I have a subscription I don't need? Did something, charge double, whatever it may be, having more awareness around that helps you to keep it under control. And I think if you don't do that, it's very easy for that to quickly get out of control. And then all of a sudden you don't realize that you've got an extra couple $100,000 a month that were, going to things that you didn't need. And that definitely adds up over time.
Agreed. I got that. I'm on the same page on that one.
All right. Number 17 is to know your numbers. I guess that's pretty similar, but it definitely comes down to both personal side, business side, all around. you have to understand where you start in order to get closer to the goals that you have. And you have to have a good awareness of, what's coming in, what's going out. I think we've talked about it before in terms of like profit and loss in your business too, that a lot of times people like to only really look at that sexy number, that number of what's coming in. And if you're not properly knowing where it's also going out, and if that's coming back as additional money in, that it can easily, cancel each other out.
Here's
quickly.
the bottom line. When you know your numbers, you'll figure out how to grow your numbers. That's the most simple.
Know them to grow 'em.
Yeah, that's the simplest way to put it. And a lot of times, unfortunately, just the reality is that the way you learn is by going through some hardship. Then all of a sudden you have to look at the numbers, right? So don't wait till a hardship, because there's probably a good chance you can avoid hardship if you know your numbers up front. But yeah, they're going to matter when they start getting low and you have to start paying attention to them. You're like, uh-oh, there's not money in the account anymore.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah.
Right. So
it's easier to catch it when you see it starting to happen rather than trying to pull yourself out of a situation when you're really in the hole.
Yeah. It's like a big bear on the hill. It's fun to look at. It's over on the other canyon. You're looking with your binocs. Awesome. Cool. It's obviously very dangerous, right? And it's a whole nother situation to be at the campfire and look over and it's walking into your camp.
Yeah.
Don't wait till the bear is walking into your camp to give it respect.
Yeah.
And when I say bear, it's like bear market, bull market. You get it?
Oh,
so
cute.
Bear. Yeah. Don't know if you caught that, but that's the easiest way to think about it. If you want to grow, you got to know your numbers.
Yeah, I definitely love that.
Bottom line.
It's very important to have awareness of that. 18, we did mention this a little bit already, but if it sounds too good to be true, it is. That is rule number 18 on the rules of money. Could not be more true.
My rule on that is just kind of something I've learned over the years. Anytime somebody gives me a dollar amount of like a return or something like that, I always cut it in half. So, I will get you 8% return. Okay, cool. 4%. Am I going to be happy with 4%? Oh, we're going to make $50,000 in this flip. Okay. If I made $25,000, would I be happy about this?
Yeah.
Because more times than not, I'm closer to the 50% mark from what other people have told, if I'm investing in other things. So just keep that in mind, but I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, that's a good general rule of thumb. And I think that, obviously being in sales, you understand too, certain things that you talk about and the way you're really trying to cast the vision and paint this picture for people. Some take it way too far in that side of things. But it's about like having awareness of being able to manage your own expectations, because you can't manage or control what other people tell you as far as expectations. You can always manage your own expectations. So I like that rule of thumb of like cut it in half, and would I still be okay with that and happy with that? If so, probably proceed with caution.
And when wholesalers tell you their numbers, how many transactions they do, divide it by 3.
Yeah. Oy. All right. Number 19.
We're almost there.
We are getting to the end here. Rule number 19 is inform yourself of how taxes work and pay accordingly.
Yep. Best advice I can give on tax situation is get into a situation where you're paying quarterly. The money that you pay can get refunded. Like that's not, so don't worry about that. Oh, if I don't want to pay too much, like pay too much at the end of the year, get a rebate back, right? And when your taxes are filed. But from a cash flow management perspective, you do not want to be like, I've been in the situation before, luckily have been fine, like able to pay tax bill in full, but there's a lot of people who aren't. And it's business ebbs and flows, right? It's cash flow management. So get on quarterly. And really start to understand the way that the money flows through the tax system, and talk and be proactive, because remember, once that new year on December 31st changes, right, goes into the next year, like that was your shot for write-offs and things that you needed to do in that tax year. That was it. So just being extremely proactive about your tax bill and not thinking about it once. In a good CPA, you'll get on a plan, you'll have a meeting quarterly, but just getting really involved with that, because right now you're like, oh, my tax bill, I'm not even going to get taxed because I'm in a, if you're making less than $100,000 of commission, your net is so low, like you're not even going to pay taxes basically. When you start getting into the different tax brackets, the 25s, the 32s, the 35%, so on and so forth, it adds up to a lot. Yeah. And so you want to make sure you're proactive about it. But yeah, that number for a lot of people doesn't matter till you start making money. But the same thing what we talked about prior is that like, don't wait until that time
100%.
To be in a bad situation. Be extremely proactive and know how to manage those increases, because you'll know if you did 100 grand commissions last year and then you're on track for 350, you're going to have a different tax year. So when you see you're on track, it's time to start planning on how you're going to avoid, and I'm assuming you want to avoid, at least legally avoid as much taxes as possible, right? So it just be super proactive. Yes, I could harp on that for hours.
Yeah. And with that, I mean, again, depends on your situation, but I highly don't recommend just doing your own taxes on like TurboTax or something.
No.
I have friends who are still doing that and it blows my mind. One of the best decisions I ever made was working with a CPA, especially a good one, and then continue to also like educate yourself and seek out that knowledge and stuff like that. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to dig into things, have them explain stuff. If you see something or a strategy that you want to see if would work for you, like bring those kind of things up, because obviously a good CPA or tax preparer is going to be someone who's proactive in helping you find ways to save and avoid those things. But also, you know, you own a bit of that responsibility too, and you want to make sure that you don't completely leave that in someone else's hands or someone else's control entirely, or else, you know, you may be missing out on opportunities. So
you're the one holding the bag in the day.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to switch. If you have someone, but you're like, oh, but thinking about the hassle, if you know you need to switch and move on to somebody else, it is completely okay to outgrow with someone you're with, or just need a different opinion or a different, you know, whatever it might be, level of professionalism. Do not be afraid to switch.
100%.
Make it happen.
All right. And rule number 20, we are down to our final two rules. Rule number 20 is to never rely on just one source of income. I want to talk on this real quick because I obviously could not agree more. I think it's really, really important that you do have multiple streams of income. However,
but wait, Tessa, on average,
the average millionaire has 7 streams of income.
1,000 streams of income.
Yeah, that's like, that phrase circulates the internet. Like, it is by far one of the things that pisses me off more than just about anything that I see as far as advice online, because it's so often misinterpreted. And then what people go and do, and they go again to all these shiny objects, but then what they go and do is they create 7 jobs for themselves that they're doing very poorly. And so now you're actually not maximizing the income that you can make from probably any one of those sources. And ultimately you may end up making less than you would have had you just focused on one source of income. So I do agree with this, because you definitely don't want to be in a position where all of a sudden that one stream of income could go away for whatever reason. It could be economic changes. It could be legal reasons. It could be that you broke your leg and it's a whole lot harder to go and, you know, knock doors, whatever it may be. You know, you never know the changes that can happen. And so it is important to build, like, look at your finances as that stool and make sure that you don't just have one leg of a stool, but you've got, you know, a couple things that can keep you elevated in sense of your financial, you know, comfort level. But just be very, very cautious that does not mean that I'm going to go try and start 18 different projects and distract myself. And so when it comes to additional sources of income, definitely looking at ones that are actually passive, that don't require your time, effort, or energy, are incredible. I know you're probably going to mention investing in real estate again, because it is a great way to do it. Second to that is look at things that are like ancillary offers of what you're already doing, and finding ways that you could potentially maximize the effort or content or time or contacts, people that you're already working with, you know, to further monetize that lead more than one time. If you've got a database of people, is there a way that you could monetize some of those contacts in another way? Maybe it's through referring them to some credit repair. You know what I mean? So we could do a whole episode on that, which actually might be a great one. But just make sure that you don't create a bunch of jobs for yourself as your multiple streams of income.
Yeah. My advice on that one, which I agree with it, is just keep the main thing the main thing. Keep known
that main thing thinging.
Yeah, be known for that.
Yeah. What
your main thing is, where the bulk of your income comes from. That's no problem. Again, delayed gratification, while it looks shiny and looks fun, like keep on the path that got you even to that point in the first place. And like you said, there are strategic alignments out there for sure. But I think you have to look at, like, what can I do to make more money doing what I was already going to do in the first place.
100%.
Right. And now, sure, there could be some slight variations, but the least amount you have to come off of that dial, right? The least amount you have to deviate, the better. And maybe for passive income sakes, right? Like, you know, start there. What income can I do? What income can I build without having to change the course of what I already do day to day? Pick a number. And if it doesn't get you closer to that number, don't do it. Like
Yeah.
if it's $5,000 a month, passive income, great. Find things that are going to $5,000 a month. They're going to help you get there, that you don't have to change what you've already been doing. Now,
Yeah.
I think a toddler can be a successful real estate investor personally. You really can't screw that one up. But again, you know, and you said I'd bring that up, but
Yeah.
I think that's like the no brainer, because it's what you study all day. It's just wild to me that people don't, but hey.
Whatever.
Was that
floats
21
your
or
boat.
20?
No, that was 20.
Okay.
We got our last and final rule, the 21 rules of money, which is to spend your time earning money until you can spend your money earning time, which I absolutely love this. I've always explained passive income as there's two real buckets that you can fill when it comes to passive income, and that's built or bought. So you can build your own streams of passive income, or you can buy it, which can assist you in shortcutting that process. Again, it kind of goes back to what we were just talking about, is as building passive income, you want to make sure that wasn't deterring from a lot of the energy that you spent on what's creating your active income.
Yep.
But I just think it is really important to understand that, you know, you're going to spend that time generating money, generating revenue. And then it's important to make sure that you're taking that money and putting it into things that can help you buy back your time. So whether that is through investments and things, or it's looking at ways that you can maximize your time. And maybe it's outsourcing more of the work that you do during the day. Maybe it's like finding ways, to eliminate certain tasks that you've taken on your plate, pass them to other people, outsource, delegate. Those kind of things can help you a lot in getting back your time, which I guarantee your dollar per hour of what your time and effort and knowledge is worth. You're probably spending a large chunk of time throughout your day, more so than you realize, on things that are low dollar an hour tasks. And ultimately you have to kind of sway that the other direction. So
yeah, I think you build your career trading your time for money, then you trade your money for time, right? That's basically what it's saying. I agree with that, and do more things that, get you to that number. And I think it's just like, as much, it's all cash, right? It's all cash flow. It's all comes back down to, like, I hear people that will say, and I've been there too, like, I want to invest in passive income. Well, fuck, I don't have any income.
I personally love this one. I think that it is so important because obviously we know that time is that thing we cannot get more of, no matter how much money you have in the world. But what you can do is definitely get a lot more like resourceful with the money that you have in order to recapture some of your time, whether that's through outsourcing, of course, investing, and just being really smart with the way that you manage that money. But initially you have to start earning more of it in order to be able to do that. So I think that that's a great rule of thumb and something to remind yourself of. It kind of rounds out everything we've talked about here today with, like, focus first and foremost on those things that can earn you the most money so that you can, buy back as much of that time. And I say buy back in terms of, like, again, delegating, outsourcing, those kinds of things. But at the same time, it really ties into your example you gave earlier, which was about, a lot of times in our earlier years of life, we spend too much of our money trying to look cool or sound cool, or, just not thinking about how to set ourselves up for those later years in life. I think that this applies to that as well, because if you spend your earlier years really trying to build a strong foundation, build true streams of income for yourself, then at the end of the day, you get to enjoy the fruits of your labor much more down the road.
Yeah, for sure. I always like the saying, trade your time for money and then your money for time. And I think that I love these, like, overarching 30,000 foot frameworks where you can, like, maybe be in the trenches, or maybe you're just in those, like, how it is selling real estate at a high level. It's challenging, but just knowing, like, this is why I'm doing this, is I'm going to be as profitable as I possibly can, take that income, invest it into assets and investments that do not require my time. And in the future, I'll be trading my money for time, and then my time for money, ultimately.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's also a perfect, like, last rule from these 21 rules of money. I think it rounds out the whole concept really well, everything that we've talked about. So I hope that everyone got as much from these 21 rules of money as we have throughout our lives. I know we've both known of and followed these for quite some time. So again, to kind of round it out, I would encourage you guys to not only write these down, but then also, like, adjust them accordingly to your lifestyle. Like we talked about with that first rule, that was the 70 70, 20, 10 percentages. Maybe those numbers look different for you, and just kind of outline what that truly looks like, and then make sure that, you actually live by those rules that you've outlined for yourself. If you've got business partners, spouses, friends, like people in your life, I think it's important to get everyone somewhat on the same page with that kind of stuff.
100% it is.
One way to break your rules of money real quick is if you have somebody with opposing actions or beliefs around any of that stuff. So definitely like shout it from the rooftops. Those are important things to live by, and I think that it will greatly help a lot of people.
Yeah. And if you listen this far, let us know if you like the 1, 2, 3, 21 rules. I mean, we have tons of content like that we can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all different types of subjects.
Yeah,
so
I love a good bullet point. Personally, that's my favorite kind of content, but we do want to hear more of what you guys want from us, what you guys like to hear. I appreciate you all listening so much. That does conclude this episode. So wherever you're tuning in, please make sure that you like, subscribe, share, follow, comment, all of the different things that you do on all the different platforms. And if you're listening to this just audio, also remember that we do have this show on YouTube with a video version, which is fun to tune into. And sometimes you get to see all of Ramon's crazy hand movements and all kinds of stuff when he's talking. So gives a little extra pizzazz to the episode.
Oh, yeah.
So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will catch you on the next episode.
We'll see you.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We sure do appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you consume podcasts. This way you'll get updates as new episodes become available. And if you feel so inclined, please leave us a review. It is how new people find the show. Until next time, friends.